After nearly 4 long years of war, all eyes are on Mar-a-Lago. This is where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and U.S. President Donald Trump are sitting down for talks that, honestly, could change everything. So the question is, are we watching the beginning of the end of this war, or is this just another false hope? And right out of the gate, President Trump is projecting some serious confidence. He's standing next to Zelenskyy saying a deal is basically in the bag, that it could all move very rapidly. But behind that kind of optimism, there's a total minefield of competing demands and really, really deep mistrust. The path to peace is just never that simple. So how did we get to this point? Well, here's what we're going to break down. First, we'll set the scene and look at the incredibly tense backdrop for these talks. Then we're going to dig into what each side is really after. What's their price for peace? After that, we'll get into the major sticking points, the things that could blow this whole thing up. And finally, we'll try to answer the biggest question of all. Is this for real, or is it a dead end? Okay, so let's dive into our first section. To really get what's going on here, you have to appreciate the absolutely surreal contrast at play. Quiet, high-stakes diplomacy happening in Florida, all while a violent, new assault is underway in Ukraine. And this is the central paradox, isn't it? As these leaders are gathering in the calm of Mar-a-Lago, the skies over Kyiv are literally on fire. And this was no accident. This was a brutal, very deliberate message sent from Moscow, just hours before these talks were set to begin. And the scale of that message, it was just staggering. We're talking about a massive overnight blitz on the capital. Russia unleashed nearly 500 drones and about 40 missiles. President Zelenskyy himself said this attack showed Russia's true attitude toward peace for the whole world to see. But even with that attack hanging in the air, the diplomatic push has been non-stop. I mean, just look at this whirlwind of activity. U.S. envoys were meeting with both sides separately earlier in the month. Zelenskyy was coordinating with Canada's prime minister. And then in a really crucial move, just hours before he met with Zelenskyy, Trump himself was on the phone with Vladimir Putin for a full hour. Okay, so with that really tense scene set, we get to the heart of it all. What does everybody actually want here? What is their price for peace, and what are they really willing to give up to get it? And when you lay it all out, you can see 3 totally different agendas. For Ukraine, this is about survival. They're demanding a just peace, one that's backed by rock-solid security guarantees. For Russia, it's about making their gains on the battlefield permanent. They want the world to officially recognize the territory they've seized. And for the U.S., under Trump, the goal is pretty straightforward. End the war and end it fast with a deal that he can put his name on. This quote from President Zelenskyy really captures Ukraine's entire strategy. He knows that without his Western allies standing right there with him, Ukraine just doesn't have the leverage it needs to get a fair, lasting peace deal from a position of strength. Now, Vladimir Putin, he sees it completely differently. From his point of view, it's on Ukraine and the West to give in. He's basically positioning Russia as just waiting for others to meet its demands, arguing that, hey, if the war continues, it's not his fault. And then, of course, you have President Trump's position. This statement makes it absolutely crystal clear. He sees himself as the ultimate gatekeeper here. It doesn't matter what Ukraine and its allies might agree on. The deal is not done until it gets his personal stamp of approval. That might just be the biggest hurdle of all. So these competing goals lead us right to the major roadblocks. Let's break down these really thorny issues that have killed peace talks in the past and could absolutely do it again. And man, this list of unresolved issues, it is long and it is complicated. We're talking about the fate of huge regions like the Donbass and Crimea, what happens to Ukraine's military, its dream of joining NATO, even stuff like the official status of the Russian language. Any single one of these could be a deal breaker. But the biggest issue, no surprise, is the land itself. And the gap between the two sides here is just massive. Russia's position is simple. We keep everything we've captured. Ukraine, though, has put a major compromise on the table, a potential withdrawal from its eastern industrial heartland. But, and this is a huge but, only if that area becomes a fully demilitarized zone. And that brings us to this key idea: security guarantees. This is the big trade-off at the heart of the whole thing. The basic idea is, in exchange for Ukraine officially giving up its dream to join NATO, which was one of the original sparks for the war, the U.S. and its allies would give it formal, NATO-like protections to prevent any future Russian attacks. So this all leads us to the final, critical question. With the stakes this high and the divisions this deep, where do we possibly go from here? What could the future actually look like after Mar-a-Lago? Broadly speaking, it feels like there are three main paths forward. The best case scenario, a historic breakthrough, a full peace deal gets signed. A more likely and more frustrating outcome is a stalemate, where the fighting just kind of freezes, but never officially ends. And the worst case scenario, a total breakdown, leading to an even deadlier escalation of the war. And here's the central paradox of this entire situation. We're hearing reports that a 20-point peace plan is 90% ready. That sounds so close, right? But that last 10%, it contains every single landmine we just talked about. Territory, security, sovereignty, any one of them could blow up the entire agreement. And so we're left with this one fundamental question that's just hanging over this whole summit. For Russia, victory means keeping the land it took. For Ukraine, victory means a just, lasting peace for a sovereign nation. When you have two definitions of victory that are that different, is there any common ground left at all? Is a genuine, lasting peace even possible when the two sides are, quite literally, worlds apart?